Tonight, we return to Vietnam, not to the jungles, not to the helicopters, not to the speeches in Washington, but to an ancient city called Hue, a place of temples, scholars, stone walls, and river mist. In 1968, this city became the center of a battle that changed how America understood war itself. This is a bedtime story about power, illusion, and the moment a superpower realized it could bleed forever. Close your eyes and imagine the rain falling softly over Vietnam. Before 1968, many Americans believed the Vietnam War could be won. Politicians said progress was being made. Generals spoke confidently. Every week, numbers arrived from the battlefield: enemy dead, captured weapons, destroyed villages. The statistics appeared reassuring. America believed its technology, its wealth, and its military power would eventually crush the communist forces in Vietnam. And why wouldn't they believe it? The United States had emerged victorious from the Second World War. It had become the most powerful nation on Earth. To many Americans, stopping communism in Vietnam felt like a moral duty, a necessary stand against Soviet and Chinese influence. But far away from Washington, another reality was growing, a quieter reality, hidden in villages, rice fields, mountain trails, and underground tunnels. The North Vietnamese were not collapsing, they were preparing. Long before American soldiers arrived, Vietnam had already spent decades at war. For years, the French ruled the region as part of French Indochina. But after World War II, anti-colonial movements spread across Asia. In Vietnam, a revolutionary leader named Ho Chi Minh demanded independence. To many Vietnamese, this was not merely a communist struggle. It was a struggle against foreign domination. The French fought to keep control, but eventually they failed. After a devastating defeat in 1954, Vietnam was temporarily divided into North and South. The North became communist. The South aligned itself with the West. Elections were supposed to reunite the country, but those elections never happened. American leaders feared the communists would win overwhelmingly, and so the division remained. Slowly, the conflict deepened. Advisors became soldiers, support became intervention. Intervention became war. By the late 1960s, America had unleashed enormous force upon Vietnam. Bombs fell endlessly from the sky, entire landscapes burned, villages disappeared beneath smoke, yet the war refused to end. The American military believed pressure would force North Vietnam to surrender. But Vietnam was not an industrial empire like Germany during World War II. It was largely agricultural. There were few factories to destroy, few critical systems to collapse, and every death seemed to create new recruits. The war became a strange mathematical nightmare. The United States killed thousands, yet the enemy kept returning, again and again and again. In Saigon, General William Westmoreland remained optimistic. He believed the enemy was weakening. Reports suggested communist casualties were enormous. American television audiences heard repeated promises that victory was near. But many of the numbers were deeply flawed. Commanders exaggerated successes. Body counts became measurements of progress. Reality became distorted, and slowly an illusion formed. An illusion that America was winning. Near the border between North and South Vietnam, stood Hue, an ancient imperial city, a place of history and symbolism. Massive stone walls surrounded its old citadel. Temples and palaces rested behind ancient gates. For centuries, Hue had represented Vietnamese identity and royal authority, and now communist planners selected it as a target, not merely for military reasons, but psychological ones. If Hue fell, the shock would echo everywhere. The attack would come during Tet, the Vietnamese New Year. Traditionally a moment of celebration and temporary ceasefire, families gathered, cities relaxed, soldiers expected quiet. Instead, thousands of communist fighters moved silently toward their targets. Weapons were hidden, explosives prepared, orders whispered in darkness. Inside Hue, secret underground networks waited. Then, during the night of January 31st, 1968, the attack began. Explosions shattered the silence. South Vietnamese tanks erupted into flames. Artillery thundered across the city. Communist troops stormed gates and government buildings. Chaos spread rapidly. Within hours, much of Hue had fallen. Government offices collapsed. Military positions were overwhelmed. Prisoners were released. And above the Citadel, a revolutionary flag rose into the cold morning air. For the communists, the image carried enormous symbolic power. For Americans watching from across the ocean, it would soon become something else. A warning. American commanders could not fully understand what was happening. Many believed the attack was small, temporary, manageable. But the enemy presence inside Hue was enormous. Thousands of communist fighters controlled much of the city. Marines sent into Hue encountered devastating resistance. Gunfire exploded from windows. Snipers hid inside buildings. Every street became deadly. The Americans had trained for jungle warfare, not urban combat. Now they found themselves trapped in a brutal city battle. Inside Hue, civilians hid in terror. Families crouched in darkness while bullets tore through walls. Food disappeared. Bodies filled the streets, and communist forces began hunting perceived enemies, teachers, officials, intellectuals, anyone suspected of supporting the South. Executions began quietly, then grew larger. Mass graves would later emerge across the city. Fear spread everywhere. Hue became a city of whispers, smoke, and death. American Marines pushed deeper into the city, slowly, painfully, building by building. Instead of crossing open streets, they blasted holes through walls, moving room to room, house to house. The battle became intimate, close, terrifying. Every doorway could hide death. Every window could contain a rifle. And still, the enemy refused to retreat. Back in America, journalists arrived in Hue. They saw burning ruins, exhausted soldiers, rows of body bags, and something changed. For years, the government had promised progress, victory, control, but television now showed destruction beyond imagination. One of the most trusted news anchors in America, Walter Cronkite, visited Vietnam. After witnessing the devastation, he suggested the war might be unwinnable. For millions of Americans watching at home, this moment was shocking. If even trusted voices doubted victory, then what had all the sacrifice been for? The battle continued for weeks, street by street, wall by wall. The Americans slowly regained ground. Bombs and artillery shattered ancient buildings. The beautiful old city was torn apart, and eventually, the communist forces inside Hugh began to collapse. Supply lines disappeared, resistance weakened, the final strongholds fell. At last, the revolutionary flag above the Citadel came down. Technically, America and South Vietnam had retaken the city, but the victory felt hollow. Thousands were dead. Much of Hue lay in ruins, and something invisible had broken. Trust, confidence, belief. The American public no longer believed official promises so easily. The war suddenly appeared endless, a trap without resolution. Hue became more than a battle. It became psychological proof that overwhelming military power could still fail. President Lyndon Johnson felt the pressure growing. Anti-war protests expanded. Political allies abandoned him. The war consumed his presidency. Eventually, he announced he would not seek re-election. The war had destroyed not only cities far away, but careers at home. The war continued for years afterward. More bombing, more deaths, more speeches. But after Hugh, something fundamental had changed. America was no longer asking how to win. It was asking how to escape. Eventually, American forces withdrew, and in 1975, South Vietnam collapsed. The country unified under communist rule. The war was over, but the scars remained. Tonight, the ruins of Hue still exist. The river still moves quietly through the city. Tourists walk beside walls once shattered by bullets, and somewhere, in memory, the echoes remain. A flag rising over ancient stone, gunfire in the fog, young soldiers moving through broken buildings, and a distant superpower discovering that strength alone cannot control history. This was the story of Hue, 1968, the battle America survived but never truly recovered from. Good night.